Thank you so much, Raj and Andy, for being with us. It's an honor for us to have you. I think neither of them require an introduction from me, so I'll skip that part. So when we shared with the team that you were going to be here, we were all excited to learn firsthand from you, your experience. We actually asked people on the team to share questions with us that they would like to sort of learn from your insight on them. And depends on how much time we have, we can actually go over a few of them if we
Sure.
and I'm sure many of us are eager to learn more about this. I'll start with one question, actually, that is not in this list, and many of us actually might not know. So could you tell us about the early days of AI2 and your role? Because many of us, especially the younger generations in this institute, don't know what role you played in the incubation of AI2.
So I was on the evaluation team for the early efforts where they were trying to do AP biology. That was the challenge that all gave them. And the request was, can we build a system that will answer questions in AI biology, AP biology? And the systems that were built were very elaborate, but the problem was
Raj, as I recall, Paul funded 3 teams to compete for this,
Yeah.
is that right? Okay.
multiple teams were funded.
SRI and,
They were all doing slightly different things. And the evaluation, I was there, supposedly there for 3 days. At the end of the first day, I decided this is a complete waste of time because all the things that they were doing, at least I felt, are not ultimately going to lead to taking AP biology. So I kind of excused myself from going there. And I sent a message to Paul saying, look, before we do AP biology, let us see if you can at least do high school biology exam. Before you even do high school, let us do 8th grade science exam. And it turns out in most of these things, the knowledge about biology was not the most important thing. It was the knowledge about language, all the variations of language and how that can lead to ambiguity and confusion. And it turned out in 2014, when they tried to take the New York exam, an 8th grade exam, they got a D. And it turned out most of the problems they had was with language. And now we know with the transformer technology that was already coming in that they used. And since then, so all that I did was send a message to Paul saying, this direction you're taking it is not working. I don't think it's ever going to work. At least you ought to start taking baby steps before we try to. And so he sent back a message saying, thank you for the comments, but what should we do? Should we set up this AI2 or not? I said, absolutely, AI2 needs to happen. But I said, there are very good people within the group at that time, but none of them may be able to provide the leadership AI2 needs. And then I just said, there are people like Aaron that might be able to do, but I'm not sure, you have to decide who you want. And that's how the whole thing got started. And I was very happy, I don't know if you remember the papers that they published, from D to A in 3 years or something. The main thing that happened was the language models became more sophisticated. They were using transformer models and then some newer versions of them. Robert and something else, something else.
Elmo and Roberto.
Yeah, and that was just one of about half a dozen things you were doing at AI2, which were mind-blowing even then. And now, you're in the second decade of the thing, I think.
Thank you. So Andy, for
Peter Clark
you,
has a question.
sorry,
Peter Clark has a question.
Peter Clark, please
Go
unmute.
ahead. Hi, Raj. This is Peter Clark. I'm
Hi.
sorry I can't be there in person. I was there at meeting that you had back in 2013, and I remember the program, the Halo program was in crisis,
Right.
and you were very influential in persuading Paul to persevere and not abandon his quest for AI. And ultimately started AI. I personally have a lot of personal gratitude for the influence you exerted at that time on getting AI to start this and become what it is now.
Right. So the origin of this problem goes back to Herbert Simon. He was trying to get some students to work with him to read physics textbooks and some other textbooks and answer the questions at the end of the chapter. And they proved if the knowledge was encapsulated into some production rules, they can solve all the problems at the end of the chapter. And so the biggest unsolved problem was how to encapsulate the knowledge from a textbook chapter into a set of knowledge rules that can be used to solve problems. And it turned out, for Herb Simon, there were 3 or 4 PhD students all crashed and burned. They never completed their thesis because it's just too hard a problem. It took another 20 years, and the transformer models and now ChatGPT, with the large amounts of data, because conventional language processing tools that we had at that time were simply not adequate.
Awesome. To you, Andy, there's this comment. Thank you for writing the book, Computer Graphics Principles and Practice. The second edition was my encyclopedia, an inspiration for me, and it still is on my shelf today. What development in the field of AI in the last decade surprised you most, especially when graphics and AI meet?
First of all, let me say I'm a stranger in a strange land. What I know about AI can be counted on the fingers of one hand. So even to answer that question, it's a lot of guesswork on my part. It seems like modern graphics is all about that intersectionality between using AI and AI models to solve classical problems in graphics. For example, how do you create models of objects in the real or virtual world? And there's been tremendous progress in SIGGRAPH, which I helped found way back in the very early days of graphics. Actually, I helped found a precursor to SIGGRAPH in the 70s. In any case, back then, everything was building by hand, much like the language models with production systems was building by hands or frames or whatever was used for modeling. Nowadays, the question is, how do you use AI with all of its knowledge of previously created objects and pre-existing objects to inform the process of building models of things that you want today? Theme and variations, for example. There is lovely work on how you apply the style of one scene to another scene and use AI basically to backfill all the missing parts that you don't have in the initial model. So I think the intersectionality is what has surprised me most.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. Raj, in your 1988 AAAI presidential address, you proposed 3 open problems in AI. One was to read a textbook chapter and answer the questions at the end of it. The other one was remote repair from Earth, teach a machine on Mars how to repair a Martian mobile robot. And the third one was generate a personalized encyclopedia on demand. Do you consider any of these problems now solved? And if so, what would be the new open problems that you think we should work on?
The last one, certainly, basically producing a summary, ChatGPT can do these days, given a book or something. So the issue of creating a new encyclopedia article, basically what we were observing at that time is you read a newspaper article today, and it says 20 people died in Helene, something or other. And 2 days later, that number is no longer 20 people, it's some other number, 30 people. And so it a lot of information you find on the web keeps changing. So somehow we need technologies that can take all of that and filter out the changing information and produce an encyclopedia article that would tell the rest of the world, future generations, what happened when Helene hurricane came. And it's something we human beings do all the time, but we're saying it would be good if the natural language system can do that. I haven't tried this experiment with ChatGPT. My suspicion is that all those articles, it would probably come up with a summary of the thing. The first one, answering the questions at the end of the chapter, I think now is doable. It's not been done. The main issue, again, is with large language models, we understand how to deal with language and ambiguity. And given that, it's mainly a question of embedding or encapsulating the knowledge in a chapter in a form that can be solved. And there are pieces of that that are not yet fully done. I don't know if ChatGPT can do it. We human beings learn from examples. To solve a particular problem, I don't tell you how to solve it. I simply solve a problem and say, here's an example. Do the same thing, do the same kinds of things. And again, going back to Simon, did a very interesting experiment in the 1980s. He was trying to prove that learning from example is more effective than learning in a classroom. So they created a whole year of algebra textbook for Chinese students, and the Chinese Academy of Engineering wanted to do this experiment with him. So they created 2 control groups, one that learned from examples, another one that learned in a classroom. And the one that learned from when you go into a classroom, there are no teachers. There is a teacher. You're given a bunch of examples saying, today, you look at these examples of how these problems are solved, you do the same thing with all these rest of the problems. And so if there is a teacher, and if you have an ambiguity or a question you can ask, and they would answer the question. In the other classroom, it was a regular teacher teaching the same mathematics. And the interesting thing was, people learning from examples learned it faster, and they completed the work that they had to do every day. And they also did a long-term experiment, how much they could remember and do. And the people that did learn from examples and did what we also call learning by doing rather than being lectured at,
Constructivist learning.
Yeah, remembered more. And there are some papers you'll find, they published a paper on this whole experiment, because it's a very time-consuming, expensive experiment. And only in China you could get away with it. And I don't know how we got there.
So let me ask a forward-looking version of that question for everybody in the room, okay? And that is, Andy and Raj and I and Hennessy and a few other people used to be on the Microsoft Research Technical Advisory Board. And one of the things we would do every year is make a bet or two that were 10 years out, technology bets, okay? And they were very precise. And the payoff was that the losers would have to buy the winners a dinner at a restaurant of the winner's choice, and the cost of wine could not exceed the cost of the food. So that set a limit on what the damage could be, okay? And so these were bets like, by 10 years from now, a certain percentage of American urban homes would have bandwidth above a certain level, or autonomous vehicles would have certain capabilities. And by the way, the only way to lose one of these bets was to bet with Raj, because Raj is always right, but he's optimistic about the time scale, okay? So everything that Raj predicted came true 10 years after the 10 years he predicted. So the question is, what would appropriate bets be today for 10 years out? Okay, that is, if you were to make a bet about a technology aspect of the future, something technology would achieve in 10 years, that is a reasonable bet in the sense that people would vote on either side of it at the risk of $1,000 or so for a meal. What would that question be? So I'll ask the three of you,
Yeah.
but everybody in the room, I'm thinking
There's already
think about
one
what we
bet.
expect to see.
There's already one bet that's still out there until 2031, what we call the digital babblefish. The idea of, babblefish was Douglas Adams' book on galaxy, Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, which would translate from any language to any language, including alien language. I said, forget about alien language. We should have, in 10 years, from that we took the bet, a digital babblefish which will translate any of the top 100 languages in the world to any other language, so that you and I can have a conversation. That means I would put my iPhone
So
in my
real-time spoken translation.
Yeah, spoken, speech-to-speech translation of any language to any language. But it's not enough to simply demonstrate can be done by Google. It has to be, the user interface and the time scale has to be essentially like having a normal human-to-human conversation. And that requires, we have the translation technology now for top 10 or top 20 languages, but the other ones, they're not necessarily as accurate. But the hope is, in 10 years, you can be anywhere in the planet and have a conversation where your iPhone will listen to your speech and translate it and recognize it and translate it. And Andy's iPhone will listen and then he can speak to him in his AirPods, and he will then respond. And it will all happen in 200 milliseconds or less. If it takes longer, then it's no longer human-human communication. So that's an interesting challenge. It's doable, but whether it'll happen on that time scale, I don't know. But even now, the iPhones are not powerful enough. But our hope is in 10 years from now, you will have 1,000 times faster computation on each iPhone.
So what from you folks? What would you imagine?
I mean, the biggest thing in my mind is, can LLMs actually reason? Will we have a proof that LLMs can do novel reasoning beyond what they saw in their training data? That is like That's my biggest question.
So my dream, I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, is having a personal assistant which will do at least the same kinds of things I would ask Vivian, my assistant in Pittsburgh, to do every day. So we did a protocol analysis of a whole day of what did I ask her to do. And, I would say, Vivian, get me Andy at Lazowska. That's all I would say. And then I don't have to write a program or anything else. I just tell them, and the assistant should be able to figure out from that, have enough knowledge to call him and have a dialogue saying, I did want to talk to you. He might say, no, I can't talk now, but how about, this evening or something. That type of thing is what I call personal intelligent assistance or personal cognition assistance. I think they're doable right now. I don't know whether ChatGPT has enough knowledge about all the components that go into it. It's essentially what you're doing is converting. Normally you write a program. Now you're saying what to do, not how to do it. So that whole what to how programming has to be done by your assistant. And Vivian and a human intelligence, human assistants know what to do. And we don't yet have systems that can take, verbal commands or voice, it can be like even type commands. Type commands are not acceptable. Voice commands, which are ambiguous and imprecise, to go ahead and execute the thing. And if it is not clear, then they engage, if I'm what I'm asking somebody to do, my assistant to do, not clear, they engage in a clarification dialogue, saying, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Was it Ed Lazowska you wanted, or it was Andy Van Dam, or whatever, then you say, no, Andy. I don't kind of give the full answer, but I say. And it turns out that I have a list somewhere of 20 things I asked her to do that day, and we don't know how to do any of them.
So I'm just gonna up the ante a little on that. I want all that, but I want the assistant to be with me as I walk around, ride around, do whatever in my environment. I'm an avid mountain biker, and I want that assistant in my ear telling me what's up ahead, and if I had a certain destination in mind, how best to get there, to know about the weather, to know about what's on my calendar, to see how much time I have. Do I take the shorter route or the longer route? But it adds to the requirements that his personal assistant would have to meet. The requirement of being knowledgeable about the real world in real time.
So what I don't see right now is the path from our current large language model research, OpenAI research, to building intelligent assistant, personal intelligent assistants that will work on my smartphone without anything else, because there may be ways of making that happen. Clearly, large language models are a component of it, definitely. Whether it's enough to do the what to how programming and actually execute the detail would be interesting.
Thank you. So let's go back to other questions here.
Sorry.
No, this was fun. So you two are two prominent computer scientists with an amazing set of achievements and a glorious career. So I have two questions for that. One is fun, and then I'll get to the other one. The fun one is this. In my first undergrad CS course, the professor began the first lecture by asserting computer science is not science. It has nothing to do with computers. Do you agree with that or not?
No. Do I elaborate?
Please.
Yeah, well, it used to be said, anything that calls itself a science, like political science was the classic example, isn't it? And I think that's by comparison to physics and chemistry, which preceded us by many hundreds of years. I think we have developed a science over time. It's a different science from a physical science, but it isn't as fuzzy as political science is. It does have some fundamental foundational principles. And of course, it has everything to do with computing and computational methods. So I think it's perfectly fine to talk about computer science today. 50 years ago, not so much, particularly since we didn't all have computers at our disposal. My first programming course where I fell in love with computer science and changed my career from hardware to software, we didn't even get to use a computer because the one computer that my school had was in use by 25,000 people in principle, and you were lucky if you could get a batch run every couple of days. So we did everything with pencil and paper. So I would still have called it computational or computer science because it was based on principles of learning how to steer a computer to execute an algorithm.
Raj, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, in 1965, when the field was named, there were two departments that were created, one at Stanford and another at Carnegie Mellon. They were called Department of Computer Science. Two other departments, MIT and Berkeley, decided they didn't want to do that. They simply said, this is a subpart of AE, electrical engineering, and they left it like that. At that time, there was a paper that was written and published in the ACM letters saying, what is computer science? By Newell, Simon, and Perlis. All of them were Turing Award winners. And what they said was, computer science is the phenomena of activity that is done by computer scientists, people who are using computers.
That's a recursive definition without a base case.
I didn't like it one bit. I said, I came in, to Stanford as a graduate student. I was a graduate student at that time. And I said, to me, computer science is like the whole field of engineering. In engineering, different parts of engineering enhance our physical capabilities of, building a bridge or submarine or plane or whatever. All of them enhance our physical capabilities. The field of computer science, which at that time still includes AI, to me is devoted to enhancing mental capabilities. Anything we do with our brain, anything, we should be able to do it better or faster or cheaper, whatever, using computers. And it is the study of that whole enhancing of the mental capabilities that's computer science. And I sent in the paper to be published in the CACM, and it was promptly rejected. I still believe that is the right definition.
But I think you need to go beyond enhancing mental capabilities. Mental and physical get integrated. Think prostheses.
No, all I mean is anything that you use your brain, even physical capabilities to walk, you have to use your brain. The question is, how does your brain control your walking? And how can we do that better and faster?
Awesome. Now the real question. What is an important lesson you learned in your career that you think today's computer scientist researchers may be losing sight of?
My important lesson was go be at the right place at the right time with the right people.
Yes,
Then
and have the right set of parents.
And I'm not sure, my parents were fine. I'm not sure they're right set of parents, because they never went to,
publicly.
they never even went to finish their school, we were fine.
Yes, but you inherited a certain gene set.
That much for sure. I was kind of fortunate, every step of the way, I got forced into computers because I went to a graduate school in New South Wales where my advisor, the first day I went there, I said, let's go to the play, I'm going to program this computer and you can come and do it. This was in 1958, 59, right? And the computer was what's called English Electric Use Computer, Mark II or whatever. And Deuce is a kind of a next generation ACE. ACE was the computer that was designed by Alan Turing. ACE stood for A Computing Engine. And he defined the whole instruction set and everything else. It was different than the conventional computers that were on computers. It was a stack-oriented machine, but it was built and it worked perfectly fine. And so when I went there in 58, they were commercially available, and they were all vacuum tube computers. The only input, there was no keyboard, nothing. You punched cards and fed them in, and then you printed out intermediate results. And so that was, I needed to be there. Originally, I was a civil engineer, right? I needed to be there at that point with this particular professor, who is also a civil engineer, but he was doing structural analysis. And that was kind of one of several such things, going to Stanford, McCarthy, coming to Carnegie Mellon, and various other things. Without being at the right place at the right time with the right people, I would not be here.
Yeah, I'll second that completely. But one theme that I want to talk about ever so briefly. I think from the beginning of my career, I was really focused on technology and building interesting artifacts and having fun with students thinking about how we could build tools for the mind. But certainly in the last 10 years, I've really become much more aware of the problems that technology introduces and the fact that we were rabid techno-optimists and didn't think about the consequences and didn't design with potential consequences in mind. And I think we're now in an era, particularly in your field of AI, where the social issues, the ethical issues have to be part of the research, design, and development phase, because you're unleashing a kraken in effect. And your pioneers have warned about the potential problems and talked about existential threats, and that's all good and well to scare the shit out of the public and me. But the question is, what is the Institute? What are you individually doing to think about the consequences of your technology, building in safeguards from the get-go rather than after effect? So I think, to me, that's the biggest awakening or lesson learned. You can't be a pure techno-optimist or techno-solutionist, even worse.
Thank you. So, what do you think the AI research community in 2024 is getting too carried away?
Can you repeat?
Do you think that AI research community in 2024 is getting too carried away with trying to squeeze much performance out of LLMs? And now that you're so good at predicting the future with some timing issues, do you think AI winter is about to hit?
I don't think AI winter, the cat is out of the bag. There's too much happening and too much investment happening. There won't be another AI winter of the kind in 1987. However, there are strong positives and strong negatives to think about. The strong positive is if AI will enhance our human mental capabilities, the assumption is it will improve our productivity. That is, anything we do, we should be able to do faster, better, cheaper. And that, in turn, should increase our wealth, the global wealth, and increase our GDP, global GDP, by a factor of 5, 10 to what it is today in 10, 15 years. How is that going to happen? We need, what that assumes is every person on the planet is AI enabled and AI literate so that they can do whatever it is that they are trying to do better. And for that, you need to have some training. So one of the things I've been saying is we need to figure out how to change the K through 20 curriculum so that it's okay to use AI tools to solve your problems, as long as you already understand how to solve the problems. It's just that, and that's not also always right. That is, I can think of some intelligent assistants you can build that will do things that you don't know how to do. The intelligence that will do the same thing that you know how to do, but they can't do them. They can do them faster, better. Like pay bill of a banking bill or read market. The guardian angel technologies are intelligent assistants that can know things that you cannot know, and that they can do things that you cannot do. The best example of it is tsunami prediction. We know there's going to be tsunami. I may not be paying attention to it. It would be good if I had an assistant who said, hey, there's a tsunami going to, or hurricane or tornado is going to hit your area. You better find a safe location. And there is a traffic jam on the path you're following. You should take this other route. There are all kinds of things where it is possible for your intelligence to know things that you don't know. And we need to figure out how we can build such systems, going forward. We already are building them, like Waze and Google, Maps and so on. They will give you a better routing.
So I love the idea of the guardian angel and the intelligent assistant that will make everyone more powerful. But I am at least as concerned about whether that vision really is workable in 20 years because of what I believe will happen, which is massive unemployment caused by intelligent assistants. I teach freshmen and sophomores in Brown's largest intro course, and for years I've been talking about the field as it's open-ended, jobs aplenty, learn the basic skills and you'll be employable for life. I no longer believe that. And I think that, yes, we will have intelligence assistants growing in knowledge and power and ability to help us, but there will be need for fewer people to do the jobs we're currently doing. And I ask myself, what the hell is humanity going to do to spend its time, its days, once we have much more intelligent help than we do now?
Is the problem, 150 years ago, 95% of employed Americans worked on the farm, and now it's 4%. okay? Now, but because that change took place over generations, there was a chance for people to re-educate the next generation for different jobs, okay? So to what extent do you think jobs are simply going to disappear off the face of the earth? And to what extent do you think the pace of change is so rapid we won't be able to re-educate ourselves and adapt?
Well, I think both of those trends can occur. I think we can adapt fast enough. You guys are inventing technology way faster than we can adopt it, let alone put in place the regulations that will put some governors on what can and can't be done and how it is done. But ultimately, if we're successful and a whole lot of the dangerous and soul-killing work that workers do now can be done by automata, robots of various kinds with varying degrees of intelligence, I really do wonder how humanity is going to spend its days. And that's not something we technologists are trained in even thinking about, but it needs to be thought about.
You know, the flip side of this, though, is the University of Washington just spent $300 million on a new ERP system that doesn't work. And they have to hire 100 additional people to compensate for the fact that it's not working, okay? So on the one hand,
Old
we
technology,
got all this AI rocket science, and on the other hand,
we have
there's
craft
just-
systems.
yeah, I've never seen information technology reduce jobs or make things like more
No.
efficient. You really believe there's a sea change here?
I think it's a time constant thing, maybe not in 10 years, but in 50 years. Absolutely.
I think both of you are right in the following way. Unemployment will happen, massive unemployment in the current jobs will happen,
Sure.
but it will be gradual. It won't be instantaneous like tomorrow or the next year. However, there are going to be serious dislocations of jobs. This happened, it has nothing to do with information technology. It happened when US signed NAFTA. And all the jobs from Johnstown in Pennsylvania went to Mexico.
Right.
And as a result, Hillary Clinton lost and Trump won in 2016 because people were sick and tired of saying, you can make all kinds of policies, but my job in Johnstown has disappeared. And you can retrain me, but I don't want to be retrained, I'm 55. I want to get the same amount of money for the next 5-10 years until I retire. And so the issue is not even unemployment insurance, it has got to be unemployment insurance at the levels that we are already used to. For these temporary dislocations. And so anyone that moves a job or lays off an IT worker or any other worker has to build into it, into their profits and taxation and whatever, enough so that the people that are laid off are covered, for the thing.
A robot tax, some people have called it a robot tax.
Right.
And I think UBI has to be thought about.
Yeah.
And we can't just leave that to economists and other people who are trained in the social and fiscal sciences. We as technologists have to have a seat at the table where these things are discussed and be able to project out
Right.
what the technology might be capable
How
of.
many of you know about UBI? Universal basic income, if you were to give everyone $1,000 a month, rich, poor, every child and everything, it would probably help. And there are some modern monetary theorists that claim that you can actually print as much money as you want, as long as it doesn't cost inflation. So if they're producing things in areas where there's scarcity, then there's no problem. But if they're producing luxury goods and Teslas and cars and so on, where everybody wants the same thing, then you'll have inflation. So there are two related issues I think we should talk about. One of them is misinformation and disinformation and deep fakes. Right now, we have the technology, and graphics together to produce any kind of image that you want. Surprisingly, when 30 years ago, we used to talk about we should be able to create a movie with Clark Gable and Jennifer Lawrence, acting in the same movie, even though they never were actors in the same, survived in the same place. So going forward, this is a big problem, and this will cause all kinds of things in the right hands, like, if you're a Muslim fanatic, the Ayatollah will issue a fatwa saying this person blasphemed Allah, so he should be killed. And that kind of misinformation, even if you never said anything at all, is going to be dangerous. I don't know what the right way. That at the minimum, we should have two mechanisms. One is social and legal recourse of anyone that does malicious deepfakes should have huge consequences, 20 years in jail or something like that. And the other consequence could be, if it's another country which is producing these defects and affecting then you need some other mechanisms which are, so there's the job losses, there's the deep fakes, then there are a whole bunch of other issues in AI that are kind of problematic. But usually for each of them, carefully, you can find appropriate solutions. Right now, what they're doing is creating, the European Union has an AI Act, which kind of says you should not do this, which is fine. And to me, when people ask about that, I said, go back 100 years. In 1920, people didn't have driver's licenses. And only when people started driving recklessly and killing other people, they said, you can't drive a car, it's too dangerous unless you have a driver's license. Maybe we need driver's licenses for AI experts to say you have to be, before you can actually produce anything in AI, you have to be certified. This is also true, even if you're a professional engineer, you have to get a certification, professional engineer. You have to take an exam and so on. I think in the next 10 years, we'll have a whole bunch of things like that, which will hopefully reduce, but it will not eliminate all the problems.
Thank you so much. We'll learn a lot. We're really lucky that we had you here, and thank you for your time. We're right on time. Thank you.
Any more audience questions?
Those were audience questions.
These were all actually people. We didn't actually ask any questions.
Not AI generated.
I wish it was smart. We should have tested that.